Welcome to Tailor Made with Nancy. I'm Nancy Taylor. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator, and today I'm going to show you how I made a series of cards using Stampin' Up's Fruitful Blessings Bundle. You can find out more about the bundle on page 45 of the new mini catalog. In our first video, we're going to make 3 cards featuring my favorite stamp in the set, which is the flowers. We're going to make 1 card that is an easel card. Super fun. We're going to make another card that is a layered card. And finally, we're going to make 1 minimalist card. Of course, we're going to be using the Fruitful Blessings Bundle, which is a cling stamp set and coordinating die set. We're also, for our easel card, going to be using the Sketched Plaid cling stamp set, and we're going to be using 2 fun embossing folders, the Distress Tile 3D embossing folder and the Exposed Brick 3D embossing folder. And finally, for 2 of our cards, we're going to be using the Tailor Made die set. So one of my favorite things about designing this workshop was figuring out which colors to use, and the first thing I did was pull out all of my colors that I thought just screamed fall. And I wanted to add a little bit of unexpected color to at least one of them. I thought that this card was kind of an opportunity to use this in a way that could be used for a wedding card or an anniversary card, a birthday card. It didn't necessarily have to be for the fall. So for our first card, the colors that I used are Calypso Coral, Old Olive, and Boho Blue. And then I also used Wild Wheat for the centers of the flowers. So if you're starting with that card, or if that's the card you've chosen to make and you are doing the virtual workshop, go ahead and pull out those blends. For the second card, this one, the colors I chose were Moody Mauve, Cherry Cobbler, Wild Wheat, which is our featured flower color, and Pecan Pie. And finally, for our last card, the colors that are featured are Copper Clay, Daffodil Delight, Berry Burst, and Mossy Meadow. And for the center of the card, I did go ahead and use that Wild Wheat. I think Wild Wheat is on all of the cards. It's one of my favorite in colors, at least for the blends. And I really hope that you will have as much fun doing this workshop as I did designing it. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stamp our flowers 3 times if you're making all 3 cards, or if you want to just get a feel for the colors that you like, if you want to experiment with doing it in different ways. I am using an E-block, which fits this stamp perfectly. And of course, I'm using our Tuxedo Black Memento ink, which is perfect for using with our blends to make sure that they don't smudge. So just go ahead and use your white scrap to stamp your flower 3 times. Just make sure you get everybody on there. You just want to give it a good press when you put it down and lift it up so you don't rock your stamp and don't get a smudge. I'm gonna clean my stamp. So I'm gonna start with our first set of flowers, which is for our easel card. And for this card, the main flower I did in Cajun Crease, which I just absolutely love. So I like to start with the light. And I know there's 2 ends on a Stampin' Blends. There is the bulleted end and there is the end that is more liquidy. And I always prefer to use this end unless I'm really using something small. So one of the things about this is you want to be really careful when you're at the edges. When I first got this set, I felt really tempted to try to just color each individual petal, which takes forever. But I will tell you that you don't have to do that. You can just kind of color around the center, but just be careful when you're at the ends. You kind of want to just flick it towards the end because you don't want to make a mess. And there is a lot of intricate little details here, so just you want to be careful not to accidentally paint over the flower, especially because this one to the right of our main flower, we're going to keep white for this card. You want to try to move fast, but not rush yourself because you want to get everything to blend while the ink is still wet. And for this one, I didn't really use the dark Cajun Craze in this flower because it's our featured color for the next flower. But if you want to shade it, now would be the time to kind of go in and add some darker spaces. Now we're going to move to our next flower, which is the dark Cajun Craze. And I kind of like to work from the bottom up on this flower. Again, just kind of coming back around at the edges, trying not to go out of the lines. And this one's a little tricky because it's got this little leaf that interrupts the flower. So it's going to have a little more white space behind it. This one too has a leaf poking out behind it. And again, you don't have to do individual petals. You can kind of go across when the petals touch. Okay. I think that looks good. And then for this one, I used our light Cajun Craze for the center. Okay. And then next, we're going to start with our light Old Olive for the leaves. And you could use whichever edge you like. I'm using the bulleted edge. It's kind of a small space. I want to make sure I'm really staying in the lines here. And if you go out of the lines, don't worry about it. It's a handmade card. It is not supposed to be perfect. I like to think some of the little mistakes give it character. Okay. And don't forget this little leaf here in between the petals. You can hear that my Old Olive marker is well loved. It is one of our oldest colors. I'm glad it stuck around. We just had our color refresh. Okay, and then if you want to go back in, oh, I forgot about our big one, but that's okay. If you want to go back in and darken it, there's several ways to do this. So you can go back in and just do a little bit of color at the bottom of the leaves. Or you can go back in and you can do them completely with the dark and kind of blend the colors together. I'm going to go in right now and just do the bottoms. Kind of see how that looks. I'm being risky here. I better use my bulleted end. These are very thin lines. I don't want to get sloppy. Again, being careful near the flower that we're going to keep white. It's going to be less forgiving. And kind of take a look at it, see if you like it that way. I'm going to go back in with my old olive and I'm going to try to blend just quickly. I don't want to make the leaves too dark, but I want to get a little bit of shadow and dimension. So again, you want to do it quickly, but not rush. I forgot that one, but that's okay. Just kind of give it a little bit of depth. Or like I said, if you want to keep it light, you can keep it light. Hopefully the workshop will help you figure out what you like and how you want to use this set. Okay, and then we've got our big flower. So I'm going to start with my light. I'm going to use my longer edge. And I'm going to go in. I like to kind of start at the edges and work my way up and around. Kind of fill in the middle. Now this this blend is very well loved at this end. It's okay. All right, and then I like to go in and I like to take my bulleted edge, kind of just outline the line in the middle and just a few of these little lines just to kind of give it some extra. And then I go back in one last time while it's wet and I just blend it out. And you can just keep layering until you get the shades and shadows that you like. The nice thing about these blends is it's not like other markers where you have to worry that if you keep coloring, it's going to start messing with your paper. Forgot some of these leaves. Just go back in, darken them a little bit. All right, I think that looks good. And then we're going to find our wild wheat. And I'm going to use the light wild wheat just to kind of get the center of our flowers. I just love how this color works. I think I use it for the center of just about every flower in this workshop. And then finally, like I said, I wanted this to be a little different. So I used boho blue. I used the light color for the berries. I'm using our bulleted edge. Just a small circular movement just to get that color filled in. Okay, our first flower is done. Stuff out of the way. I'm going to keep wild wheat right where it is because we're definitely going to use that one again. I'm going to move this one. The next one we're going to do is our layered card. So we're going to use our old olive, and this is where we're going to work with our moody mauve. Sorry, I'm wearing a shirt that I painted in, so I have paint all over me. Was not intending to be in this video. Hopefully I will not be. Okay, so we're gonna do this card next, and I'm going to carry over our light Cajun crease from the last card. That was the color of our main flower. That's what I chose to use for the small flower. If you're following along with the same colors. Sure my camera's okay. All right. All right, so let's get started. So for this card, for the center of the card, for our main flower, we are going to use light wild wheat. Same thing as before. Just want to be careful with the petals on the edges. And not worry too much about coloring in exactly in the shape of the flower for the rest of it. Kind of go straight across. These flowers are going to be dark, so it's a little more forgiving if you accidentally do go out of the lines. And something I wanted to note for this is if you have a color lifter and you make a mistake, you can use that to kind of get to the side. But another really cool thing about it, which I used on this card, is if you take your color lifter and you kind of just flick towards the center while it's still wet, it will give you, you're gonna have to wait a little bit for it to dry, but it will give you some more dimension. And I'll let that dry and see if you can see it. I can already see the colors coming through. Just a different technique for blending. See, that just gives it a little more dimension. I love to use our color lifter when I'm trying to get shades and shadows. Okay. We're also going to use, I guess we're going to use the dark wild wheat. While we're using wild wheat, we'll use that for the center of this card. Or if you want to keep it lighter, use the lighter shade, which I think is what I actually did, but it's okay. And then we'll use this light wild wheat again for the center of our other flowers. Okay. And then we're going to use our light pecan pie for the center of our main flower. And if you want to give it more depth, you can go in with the dark and do the center. I don't know, I know this isn't a sunflower, but I think when I designed this one, there was a part of me just thinking of some of those really deep colored flowers like mums or sunflowers. Okay. And we're going to use our Berry Burst, the light color. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to use our Moody Mauve for these guys. And I do use our bulleted edge for this one. This one, you really want to be careful on the tips. I kind of dot the tips and then pull the color towards it from the bottom. Really using a light hand on the edges. I love our blends, and I find the coloring aspect of card making to be very relaxing. These are my favorite product that Stampin Up offers. I have finally completed my collection. I have all the colors now, and I just love having so many options when I make cards. For those of you not familiar with Stampin Up, one of the really cool things is that the colors are consistent across all of the products. So if you're using a marker or a blend, it's going to be the exact same color as the paper, as the ribbon, as any embellishments. It's all going to give you just such a beautiful, cohesive look. And I really appreciate that. So again, just dotting the edges, pulling in until you get it all colored. And I know this is a little bit of a tedious card, tedious image to color, but hopefully you have fun with it. And then if you want to go back in with the dark Moody Mauve, you can do that. You don't have to. If you like the color you've got, you keep it that way. But if you want, and you could just go in with a light hand, and I'm just going to go in and kind of pull a darker color from the center, just to kind of give it a little something different. You don't have to. And then if you do something you don't like, make it too dark, or you're just not happy with the pattern, you can go back in with the blender or with the light color and kind of blend it all out. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to leave it alone. And then we're going to go back to our Cajun Craze. I'm using the light one. And we're gonna color in our second flower, second larger flower. I'm using the longer edge, kind of just pulling the color, just being careful not to accidentally hit any of the leaves. And I'm not gonna lie, there's some trial and error with this set. I definitely had to start over a couple times when I first got it. But I guess for me, it's been just trying to learn how to enjoy the process, not to do the art for the end result, but for the act of doing it, and just kind of try to enjoy doing it. That helps manage any frustration from mess ups or needing to start over. Okay, I think we got everybody. And then we're going to go in with our Old Olive or Mossy Meadow, whichever green you decide you want to use. I believe for this card, I used Mossy Meadow. So we're going to start, this time I'll start with our big leaf so I don't forget him. And I kind of went in with the light. I like to start on the end. Kind of loop around our flower. Kind of just do an outline. This is a little darker of a color than the Old Olive. So I kind of like to just hit some of the lines and then go back in and shade. And you'll see as it dries, you'll actually see it start to look lighter. And it's up to you whether that's enough. If you want to go back in with the dark, Mossy Meadow, the light color is a little bit dark to begin with, so you may decide that you like it just the way it is. Using the bulleted edge for the smaller flowers, for the smaller leaves. Making sure I don't forget about this guy over here. Or this guy over here, which I forgot about just about every time I use this set. And then if you want to go back in and just to try something a little different while it's still wet, go back in and kind of flick your color lifter and maybe like the one side of each of the leaves, just to kind of give it a little bit of depth. You can do that. This big leaf over here might already be too dry, but we can try maybe at the edges. Just see what it does. Worst case, it does nothing. And then last but not least, decide what color you want that little element to be. I wanted to find some way to work in cherry cobbler. So for this card, I used the light cherry cobbler for the berries. I just think it adds a little bit of brightness. Okay, that is our second flower. Second set. Sorry, I hope that wasn't too crooked. And then last but not least, we're going to do our minimalist flowers. Move these out of the way. Some of our colors are going to carry over, particularly particularly wild wheat and mossy meadow. And then we're gonna bring our last batch of colors. Okay. This one I wanted to make a little brighter. So for this one, we're gonna use copper clay for our main flower. I wanted to show examples of the different options you can use. And copper clay is another one of those colors from our in colors that I am just in love with. I get very attached to some of the in colors. The in colors are the colors that come out and they're here for 2 years and then they go away. Sometimes they come back as a core color, sometimes they don't. And the copper clay and wild wheat and booty mauve and boho blue. There's just, I'm gonna miss them all, but we have plenty of time to use them. We're not near the end of a cycle. And these come out every year. So they're always in colors that overlap and are around for 2 years, which is great because you just kind of continue to build your collection of blends. If you're like me and you like to do that. Definitely keeps things interesting. Okay. And then if you want to go back in with your color lifter, if you want to, and just kind of hit the end of some of these petals just to kind of give some dimension, you can. I'd be a little bit careful at the end of the ones that bleed onto the white. Just, you want to pull towards the center of the flower, not out, because we don't want that color to bleed over into the side of the page. And then we're going to use our berry burst for our, I don't know if they're daisies, mums. They're definitely not mums, but they're adorable, whatever they are. Again, we're going to kind of be very careful and light-handed at the ends. Just kind of put a little dot there and pull in towards the center with our color. Looks like I missed a petal there. I'll go back in a second and fix it. And you can kind of go in a circle around the center so that you don't accidentally go in there. You could also do something like this where you kind of dot the ends and go around the periphery and then shade it in. That helps it go a little faster. As you do this, you kind of learn what works for you. It's not always going to be the same thing for everyone. I'm constantly trying new ways of doing things to see if maybe the ways I've been doing it aren't necessarily the best. I'll try out different ways of doing it in this video, just to show you some options. Okay, and then we've got the last one down here. I like to do this one first because it's a darker color. It makes it a little easier when you're doing the secondary flower. See where you're going. And I don't quite worry as much about the yellow bleeding in since this is a pretty dark color. Okay, I like that. And then we are going to go back in with our wild wheat. We're going to get the center of these flowers. Don't worry about it not being perfect. If it does go a little outside the circle, kind of just makes like a nice shaded look there. All right, next we're going to do our light Daffodil Delight. And for this one, you can kind of just spread that color out there. Make sure not to go out of the lines at the tips, of course, but just going to spread it out there, and then we're going to go back in with our dark. Okay. And I went ahead and I kind of got the center of our flower. I wanted to try this one two-tone, and then went back in and kind of just went over the petals. And if that's not dark enough, you can go back in with the light, blend it out a little more. But I like that. I think that looks good. And then we're going to come in with our dark berry burst for the berries. I know I'm doing everything in different order this card, I'm sorry. Or if there's another color that you're trying to bring in, if you're doing this on a cherry cobbler back card front, you might want to make it this one cherry cobbler too. I just wanted to show some different options. And then finally, we're going to do our leaves, which I did these in light mossy meadow. Here's our bulleted edge like we did before. Make sure we get all the leaves. Okay. Including this one hiding back here. And then finally, we're going to do our main leaf, same as we did last time, working our way around the periphery, kind of coming up around all the flowers. So do the outline. Couple of lines in there, and then kind of just go back in, let the color spread out. Okay. Beautiful. All right, so we have our 3 variations on how to do our flowers, and now we are going to take our coordinating die, and we're going to cut each of these out, and I will be right back. And we have our beautifully cut out flowers, and now we can start assembling our cards. So let's go ahead and start with our simple card. The first card we're going to make is our vertical fold card, and it's just very simple, and it features our distressed brick embossing folder. And so that is that version of our flowers. So for this card, we are going to use a Mossy Meadow card base. And if you're starting from scratch, I always like to start with one of our 8.5 by 11 pieces of cardstock. And as you learned, if you did my last workshop, we kind of just went over some basic card making. There's 2 ways to get 2 card bases from this. One of them is to cut it this way, and one of it is to cut it this way. And the dimensions are the same either way. I keep mine marked out here. And so for this one, since we're doing it long ways, we are going to start by cutting at 4 1/4, and that is going to give us 2 perfectly sized card bases. And then we're going to score it at 5 1/2. This is our paper trimmer. It has a blade for cutting and it has a blade for scoring, and I love using it. Highly recommend it if you do not have it. So we're going to start with that. I don't know where I think I'm going. And then we are going to get a standard card front that we are going to cut out from basic white. And for that, we are going to cut a base that is 4 inches by 5 1/4. And you will see that that gives you a perfect 1/4 inch border. And then while we're at it, let's go ahead and do another one of those 4 inches by 5 1/4, because that'll be the inside piece for our card. Okay. And then we can take that little leftover scrap and we could use that to do our sentiment when the time comes. I'll just set it aside for now. Okay. So for our card base, we're going to be using the Exposed Brick 3D embossing folder. As we talked about in the last workshop, our embossing folders have a line, and you could use that line to line up your card. And before you shut the folder, making sure that it's on that line, squeezing it shut. This way we have a nice straight image. This is, as I said at the beginning of the video, this is a minimalistic card. It doesn't have a ton going on, but it's just simple, and sometimes I think simple things can be meaningful. Anyway, we're also in this workshop featuring our adhesive back speckled dots. These colors are just gorgeous, and they are used on a variety of the cards we're using in this workshop. I loved using the Mossy Meadow to just kind of give it a little something extra, but if you don't like embellishments, you don't have to use them. All right, so I'm going to be using our Stampin' Seal, which is my favorite way to attach my cards, but you could also use our Tombow liquid glue, which is a favorite glue for card making. If you're new to this, you may want to use the glue. It is a little more forgiving. If you're using the glue, you kind of want to get it about 1/4 inch off the edge so that you have some room to wiggle it around. If you're using Stampin' Seal, basically it's kind of the same thing where you want to get about 1/4 inch over. You want to press down and then come straight up. And how much you use depends on you. I don't always use a ton. And then kind of look at your image, decide which way you want it. I'm going to do mine this way. And then use your grid paper to line up your card. So if you line up the card at the top, it'll help you get a straighter image. If you're using Stampin' Seal, kind of move it around without pressing it down until you get it where you want it. One you like. If you want to pick it up a little bit and move it, you can before it gets too dry. Same with the glue. Gonna just move it around till you get the edge you like. And then when you're happy with it, Just press it down. Same with the glue. Just want to let it seal down there. And then we're going to do the same thing on the inside of our card. I kind of just go across the top and bottom. Use your grid paper. I'll use it sideways here. Why not? And then when you like where it is, kind of just push it down. And then we are going to, let's go ahead and stamp our sentiment. It says grateful for you. For this stamp set, I just wanted to show, for this card, I wanted to show a different way of using it. So since we have grateful for you on some of our other cards, I just wanted to do grateful. Again, this is our understated minimalist card. So there are different ways you can do this. If you're familiar with masking, you can mask. But I just wanted to kind of keep it simple for this video. So for this one, we're just going to take our stamp. We're going to block our sentiment, open our Mossy Meadow ink, and very gently line it up so that we're not over the words for you, and tap until we get the letters inks that we want. If you go a little bit over, if you have a baby wipe, or if you want to just literally just take your chamois out of its case and just gently touch that little area that you errantly got ink on, that's all you need to do. And then go ahead and stamp your sentiment. Try not to rock it, and then go straight up. There we go. And then we're going to take our die, and for this one, I believe this comes from the Timeless Arrangement set. If you're doing the workshop, all of this will be provided for you, and we're going to just run that through the Stamp Cut and Emboss machine, and I'll be right back. And now we're going to just finish assembling our card. So we're going to take our card, line it up on our grid paper if you need to. We're going to get our flowers, and for this we're going to use dimensionals. Okay, so for this one, I kind of like to put one towards the end of our main flower, and then maybe put two more. One towards the edge of our yellow flower, and then a third one kind of up here over by our leaves. All right, you want to try to, you can kind of just set it down without pushing it down, and kind of get, and I'm going to go ahead and just put the adhesive on this, and you kind of want to just get an idea, kind of just lay it down, figure out, you know, maybe you stamped it a little too close to the edge, maybe you want to orient it a little differently. But kind of just using our grid paper to line things up and just kind of figure out where you think it goes, where you think it looks best. Maybe I'll do this one a little different. The last one I did at the top, I'll just, why not? Okay, line that up. And then once you like where it is, just press down. And then go ahead, if you're adding embellishments and if you are registered for the workshop, you do have these in your kits. And use your, take your pick tool and use your glued edge with the putty. And we're gonna just go ahead, and for this one, I like to use threes, I don't know. But you're gonna use two big ones and one little one, or whatever you like. You can use a ton more if you want to. And I kind of just put one in the corner, and I put another one. I'll put this one on the top since I changed the orientation here. And then I use one of the little ones closer to the top. And there you go. Card number one is done. And if you want, you can stamp something on the inside. The sentiments in this set are super fun. I'm grateful for you, wishing you many blessings, hello friend. So it just kind of gives you different ideas for what you can do. There are also a couple sets that I highly recommend. If you have them, think about combining these sets for the sentiment, and that's the Everlasting Beauty set. It has a really great anniversary sentiment. Here's to all the beautiful things to come. If friends were flowers, I'd have the pick of the bunch. That could obviously work for any floral card. I also really love the Bold Bouquet set, and I use this sentiment constantly. Thanks for blessing my life. I feel like that's a really good one for Thanksgiving as well, if you're sending a Thanksgiving card. Okay, so card number 1 is done. Let's move this one out of the way. Next card we're gonna make is our layered card. And I'm gonna do something that I don't think I've ever done in a video before, which is work on 2 cards at once. If you're making both of these cards, you'll see that they share some common elements, the most significant of which is the use of the distressed tile 3D embossing folder. They also both feature our Taylor tag dies. So now is a good time to just kind of gather materials and cut out the pieces that we need if you are not following along with the kit with your subscription to the virtual workshop. So you're going to go ahead and cut out 3 basic white tags from the tailor-made kit and go ahead and do 2 card fronts that are embossed with the Distress Tile 3D embossing folder. And I just wanted to share a quick word about a potential variation if you want to, and just some tips on cutting and embossing. So you'll see that in our easel card, we have a really beautiful crisp image. And that is because I used the embossing folder and I did not cut. But let's say you want to add a little variation to the card. Maybe you want to use the largest rectangle from Deckled Rectangles to get that cut out edge. Decide how sharp you want the image to look. So in our layered card, you can see that first I emboss and then I cut. So we have a flatter image, which is what I wanted because I really wanted this beautiful tartan foil paper, which is available as an online exclusive right now. I really wanted it to stand out. So just be aware that if you're going to do a variation, which I will for this video, so it will be flatter, but I'll show you the 2 variations. So go ahead and start with 2 white card fronts and emboss them both and cut them both, depending on whether you want to use the deckled rectangles. So we now have 2 deckled rectangles that are also embossed. For both of these cards, we're going to need some tailor-made tags. Well, they will be tailor-made tags because I'm making them with you. So let's go ahead and get out our tailor-made tag die set if you are crafting along at home and don't have the pre-cut pieces. And for this card, I chose to use the second one in of the more decorative tags, but you can choose whichever one you like. Let's do 2 in basic white and 1 in moody mauve. For this card, I heat embossed my sentiment, but if you don't have a heat embossing kit, you can use white craft ink or any other color ink. For those of you heat embossing at home, go ahead and get your sentiment inky using Versamark. Stamp the image on the tag and then cover it with the white embossing powder. Be sure to use the brush that's included in the kit if you have it to get off any stray embossing powder. And then go ahead, turn on your heat tool, get it hot, and move in a circular direction until you see it liquefy. So we're going to start with a basic card front that we're cutting the same exact way we did for our minimalist card. So we're going to cut this paper at 4 1/4. We're going to score it at 5 1/2. So we're going to start with that. Go ahead and add in a card front that is 4 inches by 5 1/4, as we did with our minimalist card. Just like to put the inside piece in the beginning because sometimes I forget. Okay, we're going to go ahead and cut a card front out of our pebbled path. Again, this is the same dimension as our inside piece. No, 4 inches by 5 1/4. And go ahead and use your adhesive. When you get it where you want it, we're going to press down. Not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so now we're going to use our embossed and cut layer. Kind of figure out where you want it on the card. So decide which side of the paper you want to use. One is going to be a little more distressed than the other. I'm going to use the side where it's kind of a little more textured. So I'm going to put my glue on the flatter side. And again, just kind of use your grid paper to help decide which way you want to make it go, which if you want to change the angle and what you want your card to look like. Okay, press it down when you're happy with where it is. Then we're going to go ahead and get our other materials. And we're going to get our black twine. I like to start with more and then I cut it when I like how it looks. But let's go ahead and just assemble our tag, line up our holes, and start at the top. Fold our ribbon in half, our twine in half, and pull it through the back. And then we're going to pull the twine through and tug it until we have it how we want it. And we're going to kind of just figure out how we want to line it up. I did this using adhesive, and I just kind of put a little bit of adhesive towards the top. And just kind of figure out where you want it, how open you want it, if you want it slanted. And it gives you a little wiggle room to move it around. I like to leave this piece loose for now. And then you want to kind of just pull it tight and then give it a trim. I always like to leave it long, so you could always cut it shorter depending on how you want it to look. Sorry, my hands are not steady today. I apologize. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and get the flowers that we colored in earlier. And we're going to figure out where you want it. So kind of just play around with it. That's why I like to only do the top of the white to glue, because we want to be able to move it around and just kind of figure out where everybody's going to go, how you want to angle your flowers. Okay. Maybe I'm going to move this just a little more. If you're using glue, it'll be even more forgiving. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did before, which is go ahead and get your dimensionals. And for this one, I want a little more towards the middle. Maybe one right on the center. Okay, I'm just using 2 for now. And then just kind of play around with it until you like where it is on the tag. Let's see. Okay, I like that there. Make sure it's not falling off. You may need to use a little more adhesive, but I went ahead and made sure to attach my flowers to the white piece that's already actually glued down. This way it just stays. And then finally, we're going to just go ahead and find our embellishments again. And for this one, I used our Moody Mauve. I did one in the corner, and I like to kind of find a place where it's really flattened. And then let's see, how do I want to do this one? Maybe I'll put one right here. Why not? It's a little monochromatic, but I think it's okay. I think it works. And then maybe one right here. Nice flat place. So they're a little different. All right, so card number 2 is done. I think it's really cute. I hope that you had fun making it. And now it's just figuring out who you want to send this to. And let's move on to card number 3. Card number 3 is a little more difficult. It's going to be a little time consuming, but we already pre-embossed our card front. We already have our tag ready to go. So now it's just a matter of getting our measurements right, and let's make sure we actually do that. So I'm going to be right back with my cutter, my trimmer. So for this card, we are using copper clay. So we are going to start with the same cut we've been using for our cards thus far, which is we are going to cut it as though we were making a vertical fold card, which means that our first cut, putting our paper on the cutter, the trimmer, the long way, is at 4 1/4. Be sure to keep this extra piece nearby because we're going to need it later. We're going to start basically just like we're making a regular fold. We cut it 4 1/4, so we're going to score at 5 1/2. don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of like a half a card bent backwards. So we're gonna take literally just the front half of our card and we're gonna cut that in half. So we know that this was 5.5. So now we're going to go ahead and score this at 2 3/4 inches. And then you'll see that that will give us a fold exactly half of the card front. Okay, so that's part one. So let's go ahead and use that piece we originally had, and we're gonna just cut it in half. So instead of scoring it at 5.5, we're gonna cut it. So we're done with our trimmer for now. So we're gonna take our card and we are going to put some adhesive. I like to do 2 stripes, or if you're using glue, again, make sure you're off the edge. If you really want to make sure it stays together. Okay, sorry, let me make sure we put it on the right side. If you did it on that side, you're fine. We just want to make sure that it's lined up in a way so that when it is folded from left to right, the folding side comes out on the right side, okay? So go ahead and flip it over if you did it backwards like I did. We're going to adhere our paper to just basically line it up to the front. And you just, again, you kind of just move it around till it's even. And then when it's done, you're going to just press down. And now you'll see that we've got that easel fold, okay? So we've done that part. Let's go ahead and do the front of our card before we go any further. So as I said, we already embossed our image, and I'm doing something a little different with this one. Why not? So go ahead and figure out which side of the paper you want to use and go ahead and adhere it, leaving room on the edge. So I just do one at the top, one at the bottom. Now we're also going to do another variation for this card. For this one, I am going to just be honest, I did not own an F block to do the entire image on the back, on the inside of the card. So you have 2 options. One is you can take a piece of designer series paper. Maybe you have a leftover piece of the foil. It will fit just fine. Or you can just leave it plain and just put the tag. But if you want to do a little something that is at the base of the card, one of the options is to stamp the inside. So we're going to go ahead and stamp the inside, if you want to, with copper clay for a monochromatic look. So go ahead and ink up your stamp. I am not going to lie, I am not good with the background stamps. And this is actually my first time using it with the F block. So I hope this goes well. I think you can go ahead and ink the whole thing up, even if you don't need the whole thing. I hope I'm not wrong, but I might be wrong. If I am, we're just going to roll with it. It's trial and error. As you will soon see, I should have inked the entire stamp. If you're stamping along, please be sure to do that. I am going to go ahead and we're going to use our grid paper to kind of pick up the excess. And so obviously we're not going to get a border like I did with the original card if you're doing it this way, but we just want to try our best to line it up as best as you can. Down, and then 1, 2, 3, lift. Okay, not too bad. It's not perfect, but it is gonna have to do, because this is what happens when you do handmade cards. Okay, and it may affect where you want to place your sentiment. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pretend that never happened, but I'm stuck with it. We're gonna go ahead and find our little tag, and we're gonna go ahead and stamp our sentiment. So let's move this out of the way. I also, again, I like that monochromatic look. So I went ahead and used, well, I did go ahead and use copper clay. It appears I just used Cajun Craze. So we're just rolling with it. I'll go ahead and just to keep the monochromatic look, at least in terms of the ink, I'll go ahead and stamp with Cajun Craze. And the sentiment we are using is wishing you many blessings. And we're going to get our stamp inky and just use our grid paper to center it and press down. And of course, everything I've done about making this card for today's video has been backwards. So of course, naturally, the tag is backwards too. So go ahead and decide before you stamp, if it's not too late for you, which way you want it to go. And now we're going to talk about placement. So we want to figure out, where do you want to place, how wide do you want your easel to open? Maybe you did what I did and you're not super thrilled with how you stamped and you want to cover that up. Go ahead and make that decision and find your dimensionals and put dimensionals on the back. I used 2, you could use 3. Maybe you want to go ahead and use some twine. We'll go ahead and use a smaller piece of twine than last time. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to tuck it through the front. And pull it through. Figure out where we want to set it down. Fortunately, there's grid lines, so kind of gives you something to work with. And basically, we just want to get it so that it gives our card somewhere to stand up, helps our card to stand up. Okay, next, so we've done our sentiment, we've done our card front. We're going to just finish assembling. So again, I'm doing everything backwards here. We're going to take our ribbon, if you're using the ribbon, and we're going to go ahead and kind of just cut it so that it has room to tuck. I wanted this to just look natural. So you can go, there's different ways of doing this. We could have used Scotch tape to kind of assemble it and then put it down. But for this one, I wanted it to just have a more rugged look. So you can actually use your tape runner if you want, or your glue, or some tape, some glue dots maybe. And just figure out where you want it. And then we're just going to literally tuck it in. So remember, we only used the tape runner at the top and the bottom. So that's going to give us the ability to just tuck in the ribbon, where you don't necessarily need to use tape and assemble it before you put your card front down. Okay. And again, like that glue and that tape runner is going to be forgiving. It is going to let you move things around until you like where it is. Actually happy with where mine is. I'm going to leave it alone. We're going to go ahead and find the flowers that we colored in earlier. And now we're going to figure out where we want to place them. So you might want to maybe pin that down more. It's up to you. Maybe you want to add a sentiment. Maybe you want to press it down and keep it on both sides and then put your flowers. I mean, it's just a matter of whatever you like. I'm going to leave it as is. So we're going to go ahead and use our dimensionals to pop up our flower, similar to our first card. We're almost done, guys. At least with this video. Okay. And we are going to figure out where you want to put it. And when you're happy with where it is, pop it down. Now I wanted to add just one more natural, wild looking element to this card. So I used this thread twine. It has silver twine inside of the natural twine. My upline actually gave this to me when I made my advancement to silver, which I love. I think of her every time I use it. So what I did, this is a really thick twine. I do like to use it for gifts. It's a little harder to use on a card because it's rounded and it's very heavy. So what I like to do is I kind of just break it apart. And I don't know, I just think it's kind of fun. And so break it apart, and then I kind of just tuck it in the card. And once I figure out where I want it to be, I go in with a little bit of glue, or I go in with my glue dots, and I just adhere it to where I want it to be. You could basically use whatever you have on hand. What I have nearest to me is my tear and tape. I'm having trouble finding my glue dots. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a little piece of tear and tape. And now that I figured out how long I want it and how open I want it, I'm just going to adhere a little piece of tear and tape to the back. And tear and tape is kind of like a sticker. You just stick it on and then you peel the end off. But again, if you want to put some glue, you could put some glue. If you want to use a glue dot, you can use a glue dot. The main point is we just want to get it in there and have it stick down. So I got a good idea of where I wanted it. I'm just going to tuck it in behind my flower. And once I like where it is, I kind of want it to look boho and wild. I'm just going to kind of press down, but just wanted it to be fun and natural looking. And then finally, we're going to come back and we're going to use some embellishments. And for this set, I had bought these and I didn't have a chance to use them, so I wanted to feature them since they have our colors. These are our 2023 to 2025 in color dots, and they're peel and stick, so you don't need to use a take your pick tool, but I'm going to use it anyway. And I just wanted to add in some boho blue just to make it a little fun. But you could use, if you want to keep it monochromatic, you could use copper clay, but I chose to use boho blue here. And they come in 3 different sizes per row, so I just chose to use one of each. So maybe I'll go ahead and show those of you who don't have a take your pick tool. You can kind of just pick it up and stick it down. Figure out where you want it to go, stick it down. And I just think using one of each of the 3 just gives it a nice little touch. And there you go, you have your card. And one last thing I wanted to add is if you want to have a place in here, if you want to write a little message, something that I did is I just took one of the smaller pieces from the deckled rectangle set. I just used some scrap white paper and I used the small one to just cut out, second to last small one, sorry, to cut out a piece of basic white cardstock and run that through the stamp cut and emboss machine. And then when you fold it this way, let's go ahead and just do that. You could add it in here. If you don't have deckled rectangles, you could just cut a piece out if you want to be able to include a little message. So we'll just add that on just as the finishing touch. And we've got our cutout. We're just going to use some adhesive. Center it. And there you go. So somebody gets this card and they open it up. There'll be your handwritten message if you want to do that. And then they could display it on their table. I hope you enjoyed crafting along with me. Please be sure to check out the other videos in this series for the Fruitful Blessings Bundle. If you're interested in purchasing any of the products featured in this workshop, please consider using the link in the description on the video and using my host code to support my business. I'm always happy to answer any questions you have about Stampin' Up. You can reach me at tailormadewithnancy@gmail.com. Thanks so much and see you next time.